Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Woods from Charleston Airport PD in South Carolina. 46 years in law enforcement. He retired as the captain for the South Carolina Highway Patrol, and then he retired as captain for Charleston County Sheriffs. He retired again, and then he was hired as a consultant for the Charleston County International Airport and ended up being chief of police, which is where he sits today. And he has been involved in South Carolina law enforcement and assistance programs since 1998. Welcome to the show, Chief Woods. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My pleasure.
We were laughing offline. I was like, you are really bad at retiring. You've done it a few times, and here you are, still in it.
Well, yes, and with 46 years, I'm considering making law enforcement a career. I don't know yet. I don't like making hasty decisions, so I'm considering making it a career. I don't know yet.
I love it. Your dad was a chief, so
he was.
Law enforcement was something that's been in your family since forever, since you've known. Was your dad a hero to you?
He was, and I've been around law enforcement my whole life. And the little town I grew up in, it was a little town called Sullivan's Island, it's exactly what it is. It's a barrier island off the coast of Charleston, South Carolina. And my dad, Sullivan's Island back at that time was just like Mayberry. My dad was the chief of police. He had one guy that worked for him, and people came by the house. He got calls on the telephone at home, all of those things. I tell everybody that Sullivan's Island is just like Mayberry, except we have an ocean. But other than that, and I just really looked up to him, and everybody respected him and knew him. And as a result of that, they knew all of us. And I was the little redheaded kid that was hanging around the police department all the time. And it's like I told you when you and I first met, there's never been a time in my life where I didn't want to be in law enforcement. And of course, after 46 years, now I look and say, I don't think there's been a time when I hadn't been a police officer, but it's just always been in my blood, and I've been around it, and I love it.
I love that. Did your dad pass on any knowledge or advice to you when you did eventually enter into this career?
He did, and there were a lot of things he passed on to me, but he always told me, he said, when you are dealing with an individual, if it's a man, think about it. If that was me, your father or your grandfather or a relative, would you like a police officer to be talking to your father like you're talking to that individual? And just like with a woman, he said, think about that. Is that your mother or your grandmother? Would you like someone to treat your mother or your grandmother the way you are treating this individual? And if you say yes to that, then you're okay. But, always think about how you treat people. And I've always tried to keep that in mind. And I've learned some other things along the way that have reinforced that. And I can honestly say in my 46 years, I've never been in internal affairs about a complaint about me. I've gone in and talked about other officers, but as far as answering a complaint on me, demeanor, anything like that, I'm very proud to say I've never been in there for that.
I love that. So he really instilled compassion and respect into you. And it's kind of that old adage of treat people like you would want to be treated, or you would like your family member to be treated.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
And it served you well for the last 40+ years.
It really has, yes.
Do you think that and I was really interested to kind of get your opinion on this because, I've had this conversation about kind of preparing the younger officers for the reality of the career. Do you feel like the reality of this career path met your expectations, or do you feel like it was different than what you expected? How did you feel when you finally did enter in wanting to be in this forever? Do you feel like it was exactly what you thought?
I don't think anything in life is exactly what you think.
Yeah.
I really don't. And I always tell guys, especially the younger folks that are coming in, guys and gals, men and women, that I think you go through three stages in this profession. The first one is you're going through the process, you work hard to get the job, all of that. So then when you get hired, you're sworn in, you're presented the badge, you're excited. Man, this is what I wanted. I'm excited. And you go through that. And then the second phase, which in my opinion is the tough phase to get through, is then you look and say, is this what I'm going to be doing for 20, 25, 30 years? So you have to kind of get through that a little bit. And then you get to the phase of, when I go to work today, if they call me, I don't care what they give me, I know how to handle it. I know where to find it. I know how to handle it. I know what to do. And so if you get through phase one is usually when you're real excited and you have a tendency to do things stupid. You make mistakes. Phase two is kind of, I don't want to call it a letdown, but it's kind of that's when you look at yourself and say, is this really what you want to do? And in phase three, I'm in it. I know how to do it. I love it. You make it to phase three, you're okay. You can continue to charge on.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think ever had anyone put it into those three stages. Sounds to me like it's like the first stage is kind of the rose-colored glasses of like, we made it, bright-eyed, bushy-tail, like, all right, let's go. You hear like the spit and vinegar, like of the younger, guys and girls who are really excited. And then the middle is like a little bit of unsteady ground of like, am I really going to do this? But then the third one is, I get to do this.
Correct. And you brought up an excellent point, and that is, I get to do this. Not that if you ever get to where you say, I have to go to work tomorrow. I don't know. You need to look at yourself. I say I get to go to work every day, and I get to work with a bunch of people that are wonderful, that are great, that want to help people, but also I get to deal with the public. And unfortunately, what you see about people in the public is the bad people. Well, there are millions of good people that I get to see every day. And that's a wonderful thing about this job.
I think perspective is so powerful. And I think everyone who's listening to this, we've all gone through periods of maybe burnout and, having that question mark of, am I really having the impact that I really wanted to have? Am I helping people in the way that I wanted to help people? Do people care? Like I've definitely, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you or anyone else, but I've had that where I'm like, man, like, does anyone even care? Am I doing like, not am I doing the right things? I've always felt like I was doing the right things, but you want to feel like you're making these big strides, and you're having all of this progress. And there's a lot of times where you don't get the validation or that feedback, or maybe there's seasons where you feel like everyone just like does not like you or they don't appreciate you. And so I think that it's those times where you have to have that perspective, because you might question, you might be like, man, like, for me, I never question, do I really want to do this? I think I always question, like, am I actually making the difference that I want to? But then I think you have to lean back on your why in those times to kind of get you through that. And I like that you said, like, kind of reflecting, like, what's the alternative? I've had this before where I'm like, okay, well, if I was going to do something else, what would it be? And I'm like, I wouldn't do anything else. That's what keeps you going, because you're like, no, like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. Maybe it's really hard right now, but I wouldn't do anything else. And so I think that you have to have the perspective of gratitude of like, hey, I get to do this, and at least I get to try to make a difference every single day. And would I do anything else? And if the answer is no, then like, lean on the why, keep going,
There you go. You're exactly right. My youngest son is a Marine. And as a matter of fact, he's a Marine aviator. He gets his wings at the end of this month.
Nice.
And when he was in high school, he was an ROTC, JROTC. And his ROTC instructor asked him one time, said, what is your plan A? And he said, I want to go to the Citadel. That's a military school in Charleston, South Carolina. I want to go to the Citadel, graduate, and go in the Marine Corps. And the guy said, what's your plan B? And before my son could say anything, he says, let me tell you right now, there is no plan B.
Mhm.
That's your plan A. You stick with your plan A, because if you don't, then you're going to have that plan B that you kind of want to, well, I didn't get this, so I'm going to fall back to plan B. He says, no, sir, there is no plan B. And he came home and told me that. And I said, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's how I've been extremely fortunate to do what I've done and get the rank that I've gotten. I'm a lot higher in rank than I ever thought I would be, and so that struck home with me, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Someone said, okay, I'm gonna be two things that I learned this week too that I thought was really cool. But someone said to me, it was another chief on the podcast. I learned so much through just having conversations with you guys and different perspectives. But he said, um, like plant yourself and then allow yourself to bloom. And I really liked that because it takes time to grow. It takes time to blossom into what you're meant to be, and if you plant a little seed, it's not going to grow overnight. It takes time. And so I really liked that of like, hey, plant yourself and then allow yourself to grow. And then what are those things that you have to do to nurture that growth? And I think that we can kind of relate this to wellness too. What are the things, maybe professionally there's training and, education that has to go into it. Maybe from a wellness perspective, there's things that you have to do so that you're good. So you have, the opportunity to grow into your highest potential. But I really liked that a lot of like plant yourself and then allow yourself the time to grow. And then the other thing I heard that I thought was really interesting, they said, it was a question, and they said when a bird lands on a branch, does it trust the branch or does it trust its wings? And I was like, that's interesting. And the idea
That is,
was that you have to trust yourself, like because if that branch breaks, you got to trust that your wings can get you there. And so I
good
think it's that idea of like it's the plan A. It's like trust yourself, trust your skills, trust that you're going to achieve the things that you set out to do, instead of like putting everything on that branch, because if the branch breaks, like you got to trust that you're going to be able to get yourself there. So I thought that was kind of cool and very maybe on topic of what we're talking about.
that is, that is.
I don't know if I've always had I don't know if I've always had that like innate trust in myself. I think that I've had to develop those wings over time.
Well,
Um,
and that's part of gaining confidence in
mhm.
what you're doing.
Yep.
That's a huge part of it.
Yeah. How did you gain the confidence in what you're doing, and what do you think was the key to your longevity? Because you've been in this career 47 total
46.
years and 46, and you still love it. So what is the key to building confidence and building longevity?
First and foremost, I've been extremely fortunate to have officers that were senior to me that shared their knowledge with me, and I somehow had the common sense to listen to them. And I always felt that if the individual took the time to offer me the guidance, offer me, things like that, then I should take the time to listen, and I
Mm,
should eat a lot of. And I have gotten some great things that folks have told me. Some that really, you look at what you do, you look at how you're doing it, and then someone comes along that's been doing it a lot longer than you. Of course, now at 46 years, it's hard to find somebody that's been doing it longer, but it doesn't matter if they've been doing it longer or not. If they're smarter, I tell my guys around here all the time, I say, if you know of a better way, come talk, let's talk about it.
mm,
And you do that, and you need to always reflect on yourself, look at how you're doing things. Is this the best way to do it? Um, Fortunately, here in the Charleston area, most of the police chiefs in this area, we all came up through the ranks together. So we're all close. They're like family to me. We're very close, and we bounce questions off of each other all the time. The chief of police in Somerville, he and I talk. I live up in Somerville, which is right outside of Charleston, and I live up there, and we talk probably 3, 4, 5 times a week, and we bounce things off of each other. Um, He offers me advice. I offer him advice, and a lot of you heed the advice, but with that also comes knowledge. Law enforcement has changed dramatically since I started. And what do? Do you sit back and say, this is a change? We're famous for being resistant to change. Everybody is. Is this what we need to do? Is this the best thing to do? You have to embrace the change, because it's not like you're going to say, well, I don't really know. And they say, you know what, you're right. We're not going to change it. We're going to go back to what we did 20 years ago. That ain't happening. not in this line of work. Yeah. So you have to embrace the change, do your homework, study, knowledge, the computer and everything that we can gain through it has just made us, we leaps and bounds we're moving. We are steady moving. The Charleston area here is growing very fast, and we have to stay on top of that. We have a lot of folks that are moving here from other parts of the United States and out of the country. What do? Do we embrace them coming into our community, or do we say, no, you're going to come in, no, go live on the outskirts? That's part of it. But a huge part of gaining confidence is always learning, all the time. Reach out to folks that you respect, that you value their opinion. I do a lot of reading. I love to read, and look at that, continue to learn, sign up for different training. I learn a lot through going to other agencies and visiting with them and seeing how they do things. Really working with other agencies and knowing other agencies is the highlight of my career. I love all those guys, and it appears they like me because they take time for me, and we bounce things off of each other all the time. But there is a lot of training available these days, a lot more than there ever was when I started in this line of work. Take advantage of all the training you can. It's going to help you gain that confidence. And during the training, I haven't had any training that I haven't met someone that's a friend of mine. I'm a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and I still talk to my classmates, and they are in different parts of the world, and I talk to them. And we talk about those kind of things.
Yeah. There are so many things in there that you said that I 100% agree with you. And I think that for me, when I feel like I'm evolving and I'm learning and I'm growing, that's exciting. There's kind of a North Star. There's something that you're working towards. I think that one of the biggest strengths that someone can have is being teachable, trainable. And so I like that you said, hey, I sought out mentors, people who had done it before me, who had been doing it longer than me. But then I also am willing to learn and evolve from people who haven't been doing it as long as me, because they're going to have different perspectives too. And so I think that the more we can have an open mind around connecting with each other, learning from each other, and then how can we continue to evolve and grow through education, training. I've had moments in my career where I would say that the biggest burnout moments I've had are when I felt really stagnant, when I felt like I wasn't really growing or learning. And so I started implementing like micro learning sessions for myself. And it goes back to reading. So I realized, and I still do it, I'll do it when I'm driving and I'll have like an audio book on. It's really tough for me to absorb information through audiobooks for some reason. Especially if it's really heady, I have to see it. I'm a very visual person. So I need to read it. And so I created a morning routine for myself. I get up in the morning, I hit my coffee machine, I grab my cup of coffee, and then I'll go and just read a few pages. I usually set a timer for 10 to 15 minutes, just depending on how long I have. And I'll sit there with my coffee, no distractions, and I just read and I try to learn something new. And that for me has really helped to start my day of like, oh, I absorbed something different. I know something new. I know something that now I can maybe share with you guys on the podcast. And so I think any way that we can start implementing those things on a day to day basis as much as we can is really beneficial. So thank you for sharing that. I agree with you. I think education and mentoring and continuing to learn will help with that.
And what I tell my folks here, and I've told them this since day one, I'm one guy sitting in an office in a police department. They are boots on the ground.
Mm.
My job is to support them and make sure they have what they need to do the job, and be there with them. I still love getting out on the roads and working with them, and out here in the airport and the terminals. But at the end of the day, I'm one guy, and I could be the best police chief in the world, but if my people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, or they're frustrated, or they know of a better way, I'm not I'm not being efficient at all, and I am not
Mm.
serving them like I should be.
Yeah.
So I love their feedback.
Yeah. Well, and I think you've said this a few times of, you guys being a team and trying to identify how you can grow and evolve together. I think that most chiefs I talk to, that's the idea is like, how can you move the team forward in the most positive direction? Um, I did want to talk a little bit because, one of the things that I really have appreciated about this podcast is, there are a lot of leaders who have gone through a lot of things. Imagine 46 years, you've seen a lot, you've been involved in a lot of critical incidents, traumatic events, and the willingness to share and to talk about it in order to help other people who are going through or who have gone through similar things. You shared with me a couple stories, and I know that I'm sure you've seen a lot more than the two that you shared with me, but there were two stories that stuck out. You said something happened in 1997 and then something happened in 2002. Can you share a little bit about one or both of those events, and maybe how you've been able to share that with others in order to help them grow as well?
I will. Thank you. In 1997, on New Year's Eve, I was working, and I'm out of the class of 1982 on the highway patrol, and we had 55 troopers in that class, and we just all were close. It was the first class that highway patrol had in 3 years. Um, and they had changed a lot of their training and a lot of their operation, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but we were just close. We stayed in touch with each other. And on New Year's Eve of 1997, First Sergeant Frankie Lingard, who was one of my classmates in 92, I'm sorry, in 82, was killed on I-95 on a traffic stop. He was shot in cold blood. And the individual that did it was pursued down here to Charleston. And he went down into Charleston and came back and started heading towards Somerville. And I don't know if it was divine intervention. I don't know what it was, but I kind of heard where he was going, and I got off. I was on I-26 heading towards Charleston. I got off on at I-26 and was sitting on the exit ramp and said, I'm just going to kind of see where this guy goes. Well, he ended up coming right by me. So I ended up pursuing him into Somerville, and to make a long story short, I arrested him. And it really, you hear about officers, getting injured, getting shot, getting killed. Frankie was one of the first ones that I ever knew that this happened.
Mhm.
Also, it was one of the first ones that I didn't really hear about it. I lived it. I was there, and I, uh, I struggled with it. I worried about the biggest things that I worried about were that we're in this situation and we're pursuing a car. And this guy, at the time, I knew he had shot Frankie. I didn't know that Frankie had died, but we're chasing a guy that has shot a state trooper, and at the end of the day, he murdered him.
Mm.
And I am worried about my brother and sister officers. We're trying to catch this guy. He's a dangerous guy. Not only is he driving like a maniac, he's going into the town where I live, where my family lives, and he has shot one of my classmates, and so that had a huge effect on me, and for months. And we had just started. Eric Skidmore had started the South Carolina Law Enforcement Assistance Program, and I went through my first critical incident debrief pursuant to that incident. And I always tell folks a critical incident debrief is not anything that when you're finished, you pat each other on the back and say, man, I had a great time. Can we do it again next week? You
Right.
don't do that. They're very hard. And that was one of the hardest things that I ever went through because it encourages you to talk about it. Knowing what I know now, the reason it does that is because it helps you. You have to talk about it. You can't bottle it up inside of you. So that was in. I really started getting involved with SC Leap in 1998. I just kind of felt a calling. I said, I've been through this. I know what these guys are going through. And in 2002, and to kind of give you a little background, probably around 2000, I stopped the car for a headlight out, and I stopped this guy, and I got talking to him. And I was driving a Ford Mustang. It was a fancy police car, and all that little sporty thing. And the guy was more interested in that and the highway patrol than he was wondering why I'd stopped him. So I wrote him a warning for his headlight out. So he questioned me about the patrol. Well, this guy's name was Jeff Johnson. And Jeff applied with the highway patrol. He was getting out of the military, and he applied with the highway patrol. And at that time, I was a driving instructor at the academy. So I taught him in patrol school. And then when he came out of patrol school and got stationed, ended up stationed in Berkeley County right next to me, Jeff and I became very close friends. We worked Myrtle Beach motorcycle rallies together. He and I were partners. We just did a lot. And so Jeff and I became very close friends. And in 2002, and back up, Frankie Lingard trained Jeff Johnson when he came on the highway patrol. And in 2002, Jeff Johnson was murdered in the line of duty right over in Berkeley County at a driver's license checkpoint. And that really threw me for a loop. Mm-hmm. And here I am. I'm a guy that's working with SC Leap. I'm helping doing critical incident debriefs. And I am a basket case. I found after Jeff's murder, I found things that stress does to your body that I had just never experienced before. I love to eat. I've been that way my whole life. I don't drink. I've never smoked, used tobacco, anything else, but I like to eat, and I'm going to eat. And I lost a bunch of weight. One thing that we tell these folks during these critical incident debriefings is that you may have a spouse, you've got brothers, you got sisters, you got people that love you and care about you, and you need to talk with them and kind of let them know how you're doing. Some of them want to hear about the incident. Some of them may not, but you have to talk with them. And when Jeff Johnson was killed, I didn't do any of that. Mm. I didn't communicate with anybody. I bottled it up all inside of me. And as a result, stress was really affecting my body. It was just affecting my train of thoughts. It affected my appetite. Like I said, I lost a bunch of weight. And from Jeff Johnson's murder, I really learned about taking care of myself and also telling other people about it. And when you are just stressed out, it affects everything: your thinking, your well-being, your state of mind, just everything. And I really learned that when Jeff was murdered.
Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. And to your point, I believe that conversations save lives. I believe that the more we can talk about the hard things, the messy things, the good things, all the things, the more we can have open lines of conversation, the less isolating it is when something does happen. But to your point, I think this was really relatable. I think especially as you, and I've heard this before, especially as you become kind of the helper, where, you are a part of this organization where you're supposed to be the person that's helping other people, right? You said like you're trained in this, you're the one that's like telling people, talk to people, do these things, and you're the helper, or maybe you're the chief of police and you feel like, you have to help everybody else, that we then sometimes forget to help ourselves and we don't take our own advice, and it becomes really hard to do that. And so I think that was incredibly relatable, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think we're all guilty of that. There's been plenty of times in my life where I'm like, do this, do this, do this, and then I'm like, wait, am I doing that? Am I practicing what I preach, and recognizing that sometimes the helpers need help too.
I tell you what, Paige, when I really found one time that really hit me. Several years back, we had 9 firefighters that perished in a fire down here in Charleston, and I knew all of them. I grew up with several of them, and I was there that night. I saw every one of them carried out of that fire. I helped plan all of their funerals. I coordinated. I was boots on the ground with everything. And somebody called me, a close friend of mine, and said, and I was still on the highway patrol at that time. They were providing me assets out of Columbia, out of headquarters, coming down here. And one question, one of the guys said, let me ask you a question, because as you can imagine, I'm going 100 miles an hour. I'm in meetings, I'm in this, I'm in that. And this guy said, well, let me ask you something. How are you doing?
Hmm.
And when he did, I fell apart
Yeah.
because I had never thought about that. And he thought, because he told me this later, he actually thought that the phone got disconnected because he said it got quiet.
Mm.
And I just fell apart. I was not thinking about how I was feeling, what I was going through, and I wasn't concerned with that. I was concerned with doing what I needed to do. And when I
Yeah.
was asked that question, man, it just hit me like a rock.
Well, good on him to ask you that question. And I think that's where we see the challenge with law enforcement wellness, because it is your job to help everybody else, to where you do forget about yourself, and so I think it's really important to have that awareness of looking out for each other, because knowing that the person right next to you is doing a great job helping everybody else but maybe forgot about themselves, and maybe you're doing the same thing to yourself. And so how can there be that community and that level of awareness to ask those questions? And I've had a lot of conversations, and I don't know if you have experience with this, but it seems that people are afraid to ask those questions. They're afraid to ask each other, how are you doing? Or when they do notice that someone's struggling, or, maybe not behaving in the same way that they normally do, and they start to see kind of these red flags of behavior, that they're like, well, I don't want to pry. I don't really know how to ask the question. I don't know what question to ask. And so then they just don't ask the question at all. And then something happens that's, tragic, or we start to see, maybe people leaving the career early, and then they say, well, there were signs. And then the question is, well, why didn't anyone ask the questions? How can we encourage question asking? Do you think that there's training that can happen that can help to know maybe what questions to ask, or to have that level of awareness, so that everyone can kind of look out for each other, and make sure that they are supporting each other?
Well, one thing is, for lack of a better way to say it, Paige, it's to be a pain in the butt. Because if you go to a police officer who's been through a critical incident and you say, "How are you doing?" What is he going to say?
Fine.
"Fine. I'm good.
I'm
I'm
good.
fine."
Yeah, all good.
Um, but 9 times out of 10, the individual that you were going to go to, the individual officer, and ask him that is probably somebody you know, and you know how they are. And so you say, "How are you doing?" "I'm fine." "No, you're not. I can tell by looking at you. I've known you for 10 years." "No, you're not fine. You have no eye contact with me. You're looking away. You're nervous. You're shuffling." All of these things we take into account, and you have to be a pain in the rear, and you have to say, "No, you're not." Um, And, in my position, being a chief of police, I could say, no, you're not. Now, this is the deal. You want to talk to me, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. And if I feel that that you need some more assistance than what I can give you, guess what? We're going to provide it. We're going to make sure you get that. We are extremely fortunate in Charleston. We have a lot of support for our public safety people down here. But what I tell people all the time, these folks you work with, you're with them every day. If you see that they were very high productivity and all of a sudden they're not, or either they weren't and they are, or they're sloppy when they come to work when they used to be sharp as a tack. All these things you have to take into account because you're with them all the time.
Yeah.
And you see a change in them, and even get with a couple of your coworkers and say, look, if you've seen that, Officer Smith here he's kind of jumpy. He's not acting like he should. Peer support is it's vital. It's very valuable. And I have found over the years that you're going to talk to a peer a lot better and a lot, more often than you're going to talk to, because the big stigma is, oh, God, you're going to send me to a shrink, you're going to send me to this. But a lot of times we can do a lot. SC Leap, I really learned that we're all sitting around with a bunch of cops, and we're cops and they're cops, and we're talking cop language, but you can relax, you can talk to your peer like and just really let it out, because you've got to get it out of your body. You can't internalize it. If you do, it's going to eat you up. But the best advice I can tell people is, you see somebody that's working with you and they have changed, you see a dramatic change in them, doesn't even have to be dramatic. Little subtle things, sit them down and say, look, I'm your friend. What's going on with you?
Yep. Yeah. I like that you said be a pain in the butt. And, I would rather be annoying to someone, or maybe like someone be irritated that I asked questions, than to not ask questions and something happen and then wish I would have asked the questions, So I like that you said be a pain in the butt, be persistent, but ask better questions, have better conversations. I think that we all have done this before. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves, if I'm being completely honest with you, is when someone says, hey, how are you doing? And it's a check the box. They're not really asking, they're asking to ask, but they don't really care about the response. Or have you ever had it where you're walking down the hallway and it's like, hey, how's it going? And you're like about to answer and they're like already gone. Like, oh, yeah. They didn't even stop to like get your response. Since you're like, well, that just felt like a check the box. You didn't really care. It was kind of just a nicety. I think asking better questions. I love that you had the follow-up when you're like, hey, how are you doing? And you waited to see the response and they're like, fine. And you're like, no, you're not. You're like, yeah. I've been in law enforcement for a long time. I'm trained to read body language. I'm trained to sniff out when someone's lying to me. And I can tell right away that what you just said was not true. So what's going on? I'm your friend. I'm here for you. I'm here to help. And it sounds maybe easier said than done, but I feel like everyone has the capability of doing that as long as you know the people around you, right? You have to actually know so that you can identify and you can have those conversations. I've been trying to ask better questions myself, just in general. I think that we've lost connection in certain ways. And I've used this example a couple of times on the podcast because it's my favorite thing to do right now. And I just think it's so fun. But instead of saying, hey, how are you? Saying, what's the best thing that happened to you today? Because it's encouraging a whole different response and connection with somebody. And so I think asking better questions, asking follow-up questions, and not being afraid to be annoying or to be a pain in the butt.
Well, and something that you brought up, just like I told you, the guy that called me when the fireman perished, I knew him, and I also know how he asked me the question. And it wasn't a passing in the hallway, how you doing? It was, hey, how are you doing? And I knew him, and I knew he cared about me.
Yep.
And I think that was another reason why I lost it. But also another Another thing to do is when you are, and this is old drug interdiction training and stuff, is if you feel something's bothering somebody and you ask them, hey, how are you doing? You're going to get, I'm fine. But if you say, look here, what's bothering you? That's telling them that you are noticing that there's an issue with them,
Mm.
you know, and 9 times out of 10, they're not going to say nothing. They're going to say, you've been noticing, I'm really struggling with, I think you're going to get a lot more success with that than
Yeah.
you are with, how are you doing? Fine. Just like you ask somebody when you stop them, you got drugs in the car? What are they going to tell you? No. But if you say, tell me about those drugs you got in the car. Well, does that make sense to you?
It does. It's like an assumptive ask of like, hey, I'm already assuming that this is happening. I'm already noticing that this is happening. So I'm not going to ask you if it's happening. I'm going to tell you that I recognize that it is happening. So
Yes.
that makes complete sense. Yeah, I love it. I love the conversation of challenging how we normally do things, trying to find better ways. You talked about this earlier. Like, are there better ways to communicate? Are there more effective ways of doing things? One of the things that I was told recently is, how can we, on one side of it, ask better questions, be annoying, do like try to be as effective as you can to get that response out of somebody. But how can we also be receptive when someone comes up to us? Because there are times where people are going to come up to us and notice things that we're doing that maybe are out of the norm. And someone said to me the other day that feedback is a gift. And I really liked that. And I think if you can recognize that when people are coming up to us and they're asking those questions of like, hey, like what's bothering you? Or hey, like I'm noticing this, it's a gift. It's such a gift that there are people who care enough to ask the questions, to give you feedback, and how can we kind of lower our walls and be receptive to those things as well?
Yes. Great point.
Yeah.
Great.
And the other thing too, like we all know, like breaking bread, if all else fails, you said you
Oh,
like
yeah.
to eat, breaking bread is going to bring down the walls and then those conversations
Always,
start to come out. So maybe just introduce some food into the mix and we'll get people to open up a bit more.
always does. Always does. Yeah.
I feel like we could talk for hours, but I know that we are almost out of time for today. But I did want to ask you for your words of wisdom for the younger generation. What would you like to share with them?
I tell you, I've watched, some of your podcasts and I've heard some of the answers. I knew this question was coming. My answer is going to be different. Um, and I had someone, again, like I told you when we started, I've had some smart people tell me some smart things. And someone told me one time, they said, what is going to happen? We talked about the 3 stages in your career. Well, then the last stage is retirement. And what's going to happen, I'm not going to say what's going to happen. What you want to avoid happening is just like right now, these young folks, they're gung ho. They're out here. I love this job. This is what I wanted to do. I went through, what to get it. Man, I'm happy. I could just work all the time. And you're going to have a sergeant or somebody come in and say, look, tonight's shift is we're shorthanded. Um, who will stay and fill in? And those guys are going to be me. Take me, take me. And what's going to happen is in 20 or 25 years from now, when they retire, God willing, they make it through unscathed and they retire. Um, they are going to go home to their families and they're going to say, Mom's home, Dad's home. And the family is going to say, really? Who are you? Because
Mhm.
you've neglected us for 20 to 25 years. The police department has always been what we feel was your priority. And now, guess what? You're retired, and here you are. You're with us now. Um, and what's going to happen with your agency is as soon as you walk out that door, you are yesterday's news.
Mhm.
And if you are above average, you will talk to maybe 3 people that you work with, maybe, and that's a huge maybe. I had lunch yesterday with 27 retired state troopers, and they all said the same thing. We don't hear from anybody from the agency. Um, So you're going to give the agency all you've got, and you're going to neglect your family and your personal life and your well-being, and you're going to work all these outlandish hours. And at the end of your career, you're going to go home and you're not going to really hear anybody from your agency, and the agency is going to keep on going. What does all that mean? Keep your priorities straight. Your family is your priority. Your health and your well-being is your priority. You keep those straight, and then everything else will fall into place. Part of that, to me, huge, is my religion. I'm a Christian, and I keep God first. God has allowed me to make it 46 years through this crazy job. But look at your priorities. Your priority, I hate to say this, and there'll be other people that probably will get upset, but your priority should always be your family and your wealth, your well-being, your health. Then go to work and do your job. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I had someone say to me, I thought this was the saddest thing that they said. They said that they were afraid to retire because they felt like a stranger in their own home.
Yes, that's terrible.
Yeah.
It really is, and I have always put my family as my priority. I told you earlier, my youngest son, went to the Citadel, and on
Mhm.
Friday afternoons at 3:45, they have parades. They have dress parades. In 4 years, I never missed one. I was there every Friday unless it rained, and then I would take him and we'd go get something to eat, and he'd sleep in the car till I had to bring him back. But you have got to make sure that everything, that your priority is your family, your loved ones, because they love you and they care about you. Um, these guys around here will tell you that if I find out that they have missed a birthday, an anniversary, something at their children's school, they have got hell to pay if I find out about it, because that's where they need to be. And
Oh,
the rest, this place will continue on, but your family will not. And you cannot neglect your family because you're in this line of work.
I agree. Thank you, Chief Woods. Thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you.
Hope you have. I hope I hadn't talked too much.
No, I loved it. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.